Hi, my name is Michelle Cordani, and I'm the creator of Pure Intentions Wellness Solutions. So far in our series, you've heard about functional medicine, what it is, and why it's so important, as well as digestion. Today, my talk is on Nutrition 101. I want to give you an insight into the world of proper nutrition, what it is, why it's so important. We'll talk about some inflammatory foods and some foods to reduce inflammation. My goal is to not only give you an education, but it's also to help give you maybe the first step in teaching you how to be a food and ingredient detective. Normally I would do this talk in a grocery store so we could be interactive and live and make it a little more interesting, but that would have been pre-COVID. So I'm going to do the best I can to keep it as interesting as I can. So first of all, I'm sure you've heard the saying, you are what you eat, but in actuality, you really are what you digest and absorb. So hopefully through these series, we can teach you how that can actually become a reality. And the other thing that you might have heard in the past is let food be thy medicine. Your body is an incredible machine and it actually can run properly if it's given the proper fuel. So think of it from, the analogy I always like to use is if you had a diesel engine car, you wouldn't put regular gas in it. It just wouldn't run, right? So it's a mystery to me why people think that they can fill their body with a lot of crap and then they don't understand why they have no energy. Or why, how many times have you walked into a room and you're like, okay, I came here because, darn, what did I need to do? And then you're walking back out and then like, oh yeah, that's what I needed to do. Or you get up in the morning and you're like, oh, my knee hurts, or I have an achy shoulder. Or during eating, you're belching, or you just feel bloated afterwards. And you feel like, that didn't feel too good. So hopefully today I'll give you even more of an insight why that might happen and what we can do to maybe correct that. But our body, if you go back to our ancestors and the way that they ate is very different than we eat today. And I know I don't look much over 20, but actually a little bit older than that. So my grandparents and great-grandparents ate differently than we eat today. And even their food that goes onto their plate was made differently. And this isn't a great analogy, but it's the best one I give my clients to kind of give them a little laugh, is the Twinkie of yesterday is not the Twinkie of today. Like, you could literally probably keep a Twinkie in your closet for 20 years. It's pretty scary. So, there's things that we need to, with the modern conveniences, has not always been to our benefit. And so if you think back of the ancestors, in the summer, they ate fruits and vegetables and salads, like really light and airy and cooling things. And then if they couldn't bring the food forward because of like canning or preserving it, they went without. And then winters were more all about like putting weight on, believe it or not, to keep warm, so like your heavier foods, your meats and your oils and your fats. So that's how we're meant to, not that we have to live within season, but that's really how our body has evolved, and we've just gunked it up over the years. So think about, I think one of my biggest complaints from my clients are it's too expensive to eat healthy, or I don't have the time. Like pre-COVID, a lot of my clients would say, my husband and I both work, and then we get home and we have to get our kids to all these different events, and I don't have time for it. My biggest tip for you, and it's always to them, is keep it simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. Driving through if I'm going to use a fast food as an example, driving through the fast food center, store, whatever you want to call it, is not always the fastest. By the time you prep something and get it on the table, it would take you that turnaround to get back. And sometimes you just have to have a little bit of effort on one end to gain on the other. Like I give tips all the time about, quick things that they can have in the car. It's not the best way to feed your child, but it's better than going without, and it's certainly better than eating through a drive, from a drive-up window. So one of the things that I help them do on a budget is they have something that's called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And not only is that good for, you can cut it out, we'll have it on the website, you can cut it out, put it in your wallet or your pocketbook. And it not only helps from a budget perspective, it will show you what you can buy organic and what you don't have to buy organic, which I usually tell, rule of thumb for my clients, anything you're going to eat the outside of, I would probably buy organic anyways, but if your budget doesn't allow it, at least you'll have an idea. So some of the things that are the Dirty Dozen are apples, strawberries, peaches or nectarines, and then some of the things that are the Clean 15 are like cauliflower, broccoli, spinach, like some of the leafy greens. So that just gives you a little idea of how to work within a budget. And some of the buzzwords about organic and non-organic are, there is nothing perfect in this world, but anything that's labeled organic has to have at least something earth-friendly that's put on it to preserve it or to keep the bugs away versus something that's non-organic. The other buzzword is GMO and non-GMO, so genetically modified organism. Those are another thing that you really want to look for when you're shopping. And what that actually does is they take a seed and they inject an organism in it so that crops can grow maybe where there's drought, where there's not a lot of water, or where there's more bugs and more bugs and insects that might eat them. They actually have something that will keep them away. But the expense of that is what's happening to our body right now. Some of the things I said before with the bloating and the aches and pains is because of some of these chemicals that we're putting in our body. And you have to ask yourself, why are there so many allergies today? Why are so many people sick more than there was before? Why are there all these new things that are happening out there? And it's coming with modern conveniences. So not everything is good. And what I will say too is you just have to, again, you have to be proactive. My goal for my clients is to teach them to be proactive in their health instead of reactive. We're a reactive society and we eat for pleasure and we celebrate with food. I'm not saying that that you can't have fun in life, but you have to find a place for it. If you can use the 90-10 rule, it's better than having maybe 50-50 or 60-40, whatever. It's just, you have to really think about how it fits into your world. And that really truly is something that I can't help you with. I mean, I can give you ideas, but you have to figure it out how it works for you and your body. So some of the things that we talk about today too, it's a blanket. You are a bio-individual person. What might be your cure could be my demise. So even healthy foods sometimes don't feel good in our bodies. So I like people to really be aware of it. And, like say I eat spinach and I get gassy and bloated. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with the spinach. It could be something within your body, but that's why it's good to work with someone in integrative or functional medicine to help you work through that. And sometimes some of these things have to be taken out for a short time and then they could be put back in. So let's talk about the diets, right? Fad diets. Oh, that's not a good word in my world, right? You read stuff, you Google stuff. Google is not your friend in this case. Someone says, hey, I'm trying this diet plan or I'm doing that. And when I say diet, I don't mean like starving yourself. I mean like the newest fad, keto diet or whatever it might be. And you're like, oh, I'm all in. And then the next day you hear, well, that's not good for you. And you get so confused and you're like, oh no, now what do I do? We can help you work through that. So let's talk about foods that are non-inflammatory, like dark leafy greens. When I go to a grocery store, you've probably heard this before, you're best to stay on the outside. Now, I'm not 100% on the outside, and we can talk about that. And I just also want to preface that each one of these topics I do as a talk for a complete hour or, for a complete series. So I'm just touching upon things, and maybe in other series we can go a little bit deeper. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. But my cart and what I like the goal for my clients' cart to be mostly fruit and vegetables. Eat the rainbow. We say eat the rainbow. So what does that mean? Dark leafy greens like your spinaches and your kale and your bok choy. And some of you might be saying, I have no idea you're talking another language to me. I encourage you and I encourage my clients to really, especially now some of you have more time, to go in a grocery store and try something different. But those are all filled with, the dark leafies have the chlorophyll, they have the iron, they're alkalizing to your body. Broccoli is a really good cancer fighting food. It has high vitamin K. So sometimes, you know, people that are on medication sometimes can't have some of those foods. So that's another topic for another day. But they have bioactive compounds and they help reduce inflammation. Mushrooms and beets, mushroom and onions clean the blood and they have antiviral benefits. Some good fats, avocado, coconut oil. Coconut oil gets a totally bad rap. People say, oh, you can't have coconut oil, it causes cholesterol. And I'm here to tell you that, again, everybody's a bit individual. It depends upon how your body runs, but coconut oil is a really anti-inflammatory food. It also has some antiviral benefits to it, and it's a really good fat. Nuts are another one. Sometimes people have to take those out of their world, but those are another great brain food, and they're another great fat. Eggplant and beets. Eggplant is good antioxidant. Beets have vitamin and minerals, soluble fiber. Beets are also great after a workout. They're good for recovery. Grapefruit, strawberries, cherries, like all really great, and a huge mixture. I mean, you could make a meal just out of that, like, you know. So those are just touch the iceberg of some anti-inflammatory things that don't inflame your body. So now let's talk about some things that cause inflammation. These, we're getting into the processed stuff. Your wheat, your gluten, your dairies, your vegetable oils. So the wheat and gluten kind of go back to genetically modified too, and the chemicals, and the reason our bodies can't break them down. Whenever we put chemicals in our body, again, like I said, is an amazing machine. So it's always, our immune system is always casing to finding foreign invaders, and you know, sometimes it's going to tag things that should recognize, but it doesn't because of the chemicals. Dairy's another one. People were like, I'm not giving up my dairy, and I was one of those. But it is a highly inflammatory food. Sometimes raw cheeses have enzymes and people do okay with them. It also causes skin issues in the dairy, but what I will say is that's one of the things that may be keeping your 10%. I'm really big on the 90-10, might be 70-30 for some people, whatever it is, you have to decide for yourself where it fits into your world. But we can gauge you with that. So another one is vegetable oils, trans fats. So a trans fat is actually they add a hydrogen to unsaturated fat. So unsaturated fat is a liquid. When you add a hydrogen, it makes it a solid, and it makes it, typically, gives it stability. But the buzzword on that in label reading would be hydrogenated. Partially hydrogenated oils. Our body does not do well with those oils. It's a very toxic oil. The way that they're extracted and made, they become rancid, and our body just breaks down when we introduce those into our world. So just to take a really quick brief moment about label reading to help you to be that detective. When you see a box and you see the ingredients, what it says here, it might say no trans fats, but then when you flip it over, you're going to see partially hydrogenated oils, because they can actually have 2% or less in something, and they can call it that it's not actually in the food. So and they change words all the time as we're out there educating you. Things are changing as I speak. So maybe we can do a topic on just being a label detective. That will give you just something to go by. Highly refined flours, very inflammatory. most processed foods. So those are the ones, with your crackers and your cereals and your breads can cause a lot of damage to your body. Sugar, sugar, and more sugar. We are a society that lives on sugar. And what we do is our body is looking for the high that sugar gives us, and then we dip, and then it's like, give me more. So it's one of these. So if you're one of those ones that want to take a nap in the afternoon and you have a high sugar diet, that's the reason why you crash. And when I say no sugar, I'm not saying you don't eat sugar and then you put sugar substitutes in. They are even probably more dangerous than sugar in itself. There's chemicals in there that your body can't break down and can cause cancer. So don't go to the no sugar substitute. You really have to be a label reader because sugar can hide in so many different ways. And they can, so like cane sugar would be better than processed sugar, but it's still a sugar at the end of the day. So depending upon what your issue is, I just tell people, if you just try a detox of sugar, and it's not easy, I was that person, but when you do it and you eat a strawberry, that strawberry will never taste so sweet to you. When I put people on cleanses, and then they start reintroducing foods and they start, they eating the fruits and they are like amazing. Like the sugar just deadens your taste buds. And they're like, this strawberry or whatever the fruit might be, I've never tasted it so sweet. So foods have natural sugar in them, and you can make it in a product without adding extra sugar. It's just that the food industry wants us addicted to food, and sugar is the best place to put it. So actually, well, I won't go there right now, but so don't substitute sugars. I would encourage anyone today to walk away and try to do a sugar-free diet. The other thing you want to think about in label reading is when you see something that says natural flavors or natural colors, you actually can take like a beet and put it and make it coloring, right? But what they do is they take something artificial. And so if it says natural flavor, natural is a very loose word. And so the natural part, right, crude oil is natural, but I don't want to put that in my body. If it has in parentheses, say beets, then you know it's coming from a natural source. If it doesn't, if it's natural flavors and natural colors, and it doesn't have anything on the other side of it, you don't want it. It can be anything. They can hide anything under that label, including squish bugs that give coloring. So, you gotta walk away with something, that would be a huge one, because when people put natural colorings and they put what it is, the source, they're proud of that source. So if it's not there, it's definitely very processed. So that brings us to dyes and colorings. It can cause your body doesn't recognize it and doesn't know how to break it down. So we have to be really careful, the artificial colorings and dyes. And people can have really bad reactions. They don't realize that that's what it's from, but it has been connected to autism, to some other things, not the cause, but having reactions and having adverse effects from it. The other thing I forgot to mention, that sugar plays a part in insulin resistance, cancer in some cases, kidney disease, diabetes. So obesity is the number one thing right now. Huge problem there. So I hope this was helpful for everybody and that you enjoyed our little insight into Nutrition 101. Again, just to wrap it up, to keep it simple, whole foods versus processed foods, to just start, and then we can build upon it from there. But if you want to walk away with something today, if it's made in a factory, you don't want it in your body. So I hope you found this helpful, and have a great day, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the series coming up.